Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Sunday morning conversation. Today, my guest is Lenny Ramsey. She's an American pro triathlete. She's also a neuroscientist, too. So, two of my favorite people. We talk about neuroscience a little bit. Her area is mostly stroke, not TBI, but it's still nonetheless, I love brains. And her pro career, and now how she gave up the kind of city life to move out to Fayetteville, Arkansas. Uh, so, we have a good conversation, and I hope you like it. And thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Hey,
Hey, how are you?
doing all right. How about yourself?
I mean, I'm doing goodbye. Can't really go anywhere because I don't have a car at the moment. So,
Oh, that's
right.
not ideal.
No, but I'm on the road bike now.
Well, there you go. Give me 1 second. I have a dog barking outside my door. What's up? Want to leave it? Leave it. There you go. Oh, no, sir. Here. Here. Hey. Sorry about that. My dog had one of my cats cornered.
That's all right. You'll see one of my cats, two of them, wandering around in the background off the top of the couch.
Good.
So, are you in Arkansas for the University of Arkansas? Because I saw you were in Fayetteville, and that's the only thing I know there.
Yes. Yeah. We moved here because we wanted to get out of the city during COVID. So we were up. Let's see. I went to grad school in St. Louis, Missouri. Then in 2016, I got a job up at a liberal arts college in Wisconsin, and I moved there. In the meantime, I had met my wife, and she was living in Colorado for work. And then eventually she was able to move to Wisconsin because she traveled a lot for work anyway. And we spent a few years there, which was really nice, except that it's winter, like 8 months out of the year, or 9 months out of the year. It's very cold.
I'm from Ohio.
I was trying to balance being full-time faculty. So I was teaching, I was, running a research lab, all that kind of stuff. Plus with the training, I had taken my pro card that same year, the year that I took that job. And my wife was traveling a lot for work, but then she got a job opportunity in Houston. And so we moved to Houston. And that was early, 2020. And then COVID started like a month after we got there. And so we were both working remote. I was working in a research lab, and we just didn't like it. We were in the middle of the city. It just wasn't ideal. And so we came up here. She is originally from here. She went to school here. And she's from an hour away from here. And so we ended up kind of falling in love with the area, and we just decided to uproot everything and move here and figure out the jobs later. And I ended up finding a job here at the university, and she traveled a lot for work anyway, so it doesn't really matter where we're based.
Did she fly a lot? Because I don't know what it's like with the airport situation. She's going to have at least one connecting flight to a hub.
It depends. So she's a consultant, so she's in every kind of project she's on is in a different location. So far, she's been lucky. There's an airport here in Bentonville. So Bentonville is about half an hour from here, and that's where Walmart headquarters are. And so there is an airport there that's actually not horrible. It's small, it's really quick, easy to get through. And they have direct lines to Atlanta and Houston and a couple others. So it's not a ton, but so far it's been manageable. Yeah.
Atlanta's my airport, and I once worked as a consultant, so I had a direct flight pretty much anywhere in the country. That was nice, but I am in the city. I don't really know anything like about country life though, so that's the thing. When I think of country life, I think of where I ride out here in the out in the boonies. What's training like for you out there?
So you can get into the boonies pretty quickly. The riding here is great. It's a great place for cycling in general. So there's I don't train on the bike paths, but there is a network of bike paths that is phenomenal. I run on the bike paths, and that's because the Walmart family, the Waltons, actually love cycling, and they have put millions and millions into developing the cycling area. So
two of the brothers or whatever own Rafa.
Oh, do they? I don't know that. Really?
Yeah, I found that out from a friend. I'm like, oh, okay.
I
Uh,
had no idea, but yeah, but there's bike paths everywhere. There's a ton of cyclists. The mountain biking community here is huge. I don't mountain bike, but the community here is huge. There's a lot of gravel, which I kind of got into last year. Triathlon isn't massive. There's plenty around. It's not massive, but the cycling community is really large.
well, I mean, you're like a hop, skip, and a jump away from Texas. So if you wanted to drive over to Ironman Tulsa for a pro race, you know, it's right there.
Tulsa is less than 2 hours from here.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah,
It's kind of like how Chattanooga is 2 hours from Atlanta. I love going up there to race, and just sometimes I go up there for a day trip to train.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, they did not add a pro race to Tulsa this year, so
Oh, that sucks.
it is. But I mean, it's drive. Houston is like 7 or 8 hours, so it's a ways, but it's not horrible. I can at least drive it if I wanted to.
Well,
Dallas is like a little under 5, I think.
the North American pro race at Des Moines not that all that far away from you, is it? Like maybe I'd guess like 5, 6 hour stops.
I'm not sure. I feel like I would drive it. I don't know how far it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure because I just don't. You know, when you're not from an area, your idea of the geography of the place is kind of skewed.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
but you get to be the best of both worlds. Two of my favorite people in neuroscience or neurology and pro athlete.
Yeah, it's been an interesting. I mean, when I got into neuroscience, I did not know I was going to get into triathlon. So it's been just kind of as it happened, kind of along the way. I didn't get into triathlon until late. I didn't get into triathlon until I was already in grad school.
Did you have an athletic background?
Sorry?
Did you have an athletic background, or did you just
I
start?
played soccer growing up. That was kind of my big thing. I loved it. I did a lot of it. But then when I was in my mid-teens, so probably 14, 15, I tore up both of my knees and I just kind of gave in, and I didn't do anything for years. I was pretty sedentary for at least 8 years, probably. Didn't do anything. I mean, I was pretty good at going to bars and drinking, but I did not do anything athletically. And I was pretty good at school. I did that. You know, those were kind of things that I, you know, threw my focus into once I realized I couldn't play soccer anymore. And it wasn't until I was in grad school that I kind of picked up at least being physically active again. And that's when I finally had my ACL replaced and my meniscus repaired. And that's when I kind of picked up running, and it kind of all slowly built up from there. So I picked up running, got injured a bunch, you know, started riding my bike, and then started taking swimming lessons in my late 20s. So it all kind of I came into the sport kind of late, but fell in love with it pretty much right away.
I had a big layoff because I swam a lot in high school, and then I didn't swim in college because I wanted to go to a big school and party, and I did that, and I really wish I would have taken a scholarship at that time, and so then I had like almost like a 10-year layoff before I started doing triathlons. So yeah, a lot of people tend to do that. I've found, especially pros. Then you're like, how did you turn pro when you didn't really have that kind of a background? It's like, that's amazing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like obviously you have to be somewhat athletic, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we can all say about training and genetics. I mean, I feel like to be pro, like, yes, it takes a ton of training, but you do have to be somewhat athletically inclined to sports, right? And I come from an athletic family, none of them pros, but all of them kind of athletic by background. Just always playing sports a lot. And, you know, even though I didn't play any endurance sports growing up, my big thing was really soccer. I feel like just the trying to compete at a higher level in any sport, I think sets you up well for knowing what it is like to train later in life. Knowing what it's like to push your body to its limits, knowing that it's okay to be uncomfortable and finding those uncomfortable spots without necessarily pushing over them, right? So, and I think that's something that you can pick up as a kid playing any sport.
Yeah.
Swimming is the hard one, right? That is so technique focused that if you don't grow up swimming, it's really hard to catch up. Like, I will never be able to compete in swimming with some of the other triathletes. That's part of the reason that I'm better off at the longer distances. I just have more time on the bike and the run to kind of catch back up, because I'm always going to be in that latter part when it comes to people coming out of the swim in the pro field. So some things like really technique focused sports, I think you're probably better off starting really early. But something like cycling and running, I think as long as you have done, grown up somewhat in sports, I think these are things that you can pick up.
Yeah, and that's kind of my advantage when I race is because I am a swimmer. I mean, I call it residual talent to where I can just hop in. I didn't swim
Yep.
much at all last year, and I did perfectly fine. Better than most people in the swim. I think I raced an entire season without being in the pool since April. So, and I did all right. It's like, okay, but a lot of people and most people going to triathlon don't have any kind of swimming background whatsoever. So they do have to learn from scratch, or they kind of, have a loose idea. But it's just kind of
Un-
they come in as
Exactly. And,
winners.
and so, you don't have, the thing is that in general, the swim won't win you a triathlon, right? In ITU, the world it might, but in the world, in the kind of the longer distance Ironman, half and full Ironman world, it won't, but it can lose you the race. And kind of that's my fight, right? I need to minimize the time that I lose in that swim because it can lose me the race if I'm set back too far.
I mean, you have worked your way up though, because I mean, I pulled up your record last night, still in my window, where you've definitely worked up from the back of the pack to like towards the front of the pack now at finishing.
Yeah, and I can get there, and but I have to rely on my run, right? I'm a middle of the pack cyclist. I'm better off at hillier courses. I can be kind of more competitive on the bike in hillier courses, but the run is kind of what I need to kind of get my way back up into that front. But that still means that I can't lose too much time in the swim because then there will be a gap that I can't overcome.
Yeah. So do you take, I mean, do you prefer IM courses that are friendly like Chattanooga that kind of give you that edge in the swimming?
Oh yes, and Chattanooga is even better because the run is hard.
Yeah.
Give me a
Yeah.
hard run.
I
Give
did
me a
that
hard
race. I
bike
know
and a
it's
hard
hard.
Yeah. Yeah. No, give me a hard bike and a hard run, please. That's kind of like, I need that. The flat and fast bike courses are not for me. I just don't have that raw power to sustain all the way through. And I need a course that breaks it up. So give me a course that's hilly or mountainous. For me, mentally and physically, I'm better suited for that.
And that explains why you did so well at Lanzarote. You travel all over for these races. You're not really, sticking to the US or regional kind of thing. You go all over.
Yeah, I grew up in the Netherlands, so it's
Oh,
easy for me. I like going to Europe every once in a while to race because then I attach a trip home or I get my family to come out. Like in Lanzarote, my mom and her partner and my brother and his girlfriend came out and watched. And then after that, I went to the Netherlands to see the rest of my family. So the same with Finland last year. I spent a week before and after that race with my family. So that makes it a little easier. It's an excuse.
yeah, actually, so I talked to the Challenge Roth Athlete Services about the lottery, and they said, because you're a PC athlete, we would like to give you a slot for 2023. I'm like, really? So I'm going to go to Germany. First time I'm going to be leaving the US to race.
That's awesome. That would
Yeah.
be nice. Yeah, I'm actually looking at, I mean, it's one of the races on my radar for this year. Might consider it.
It's one of those iconic races that probably the biggest one out, that everybody knows outside of Kona. I'm like, I really want to do that.
Exactly. It's a bucket list race for sure.
Yeah, because like the first 7 years I raced triathlon, I thought it was all about, I wanted to race a lot, kind of enjoy the high I got from that. And it's like then after the pandemic happened, it wasn't the same for me. I'm like, we got to switch it up. We're gonna go with like experience, as a whole and enjoy that rather than try to see how fast I can go. Because I got slower, I got fatter, I got a lot fatter. So it is what it is. But
Yeah, COVID was I think it was a hit for everybody in different ways. And I think, it was for a lot of, for any athlete, but especially the pro athletes, it was rough, right? Because we kept building up to races that didn't happen. And, if you are generally racing once every 1 or 2 months, right? And then you build up to that and it doesn't happen. You build up to that and it doesn't happen, right? It became a really rough year for many of us.
yeah, I mean, mine was particularly rough just on my own personal circumstances because in December 2019, I went through a breakup.
That doesn't help. Yeah.
No, and then like all our friends were mutual friends, and because they all lived by her, they kind of left me. It's like so I entered the pandemic like in isolation, so it was hard to keep myself motivated to train.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't always race once every 2 months or stuff. That 2018 season is a lot of IMs. How did that feel in your body?
I love it. I love the feeling of the IM race, the endurance of it. And, I can recover in a couple of weeks and be back up there. I do get injured a lot. it doesn't really seem to have anything to do with my training or racing load. It's just that every so often I just get injured. And so if, as long as I'm fit, I like to race every month or so. Though, to be fair, last year I raced, what was it, 3 or 4 Ironmans in like the same number of months, and that was a little bit too much. I needed a break somewhere in the middle. So I think I can do 2, maybe 3, if they're spaced out properly, and then I need a break. So I'd rather I'd rather do like 4 Ironmans spread out over a season and not squash them all together. But it was just, the schedule last year was just weird. There weren't that many pro races, and I just kind of picked the ones that I wanted to race, and they just all ended up kind of being back to back. And so I just kind of went with it, but that was rough on my system.
What's your favorite race been so far?
Probably Lanzarote.
It's a tough course. I mean, I've seen the Ironman videos that have done it in like the past on YouTube and stuff. It looks pretty brutal.
It is, but it's absolutely gorgeous. It's definitely a hard one. The year I did it, it was still a mass start for the swim, one of the last ones, and I'm not sure if it still is, which I was terrified of. But actually, for me, it was kind of beneficial, because I had people around me the whole time, versus, in the pro women's swim, if there's 15 women starting, and if I don't have a couple of people that I can swim with, I'm alone for that whole swim, right? Whereas now there were just people at my pace around me. There were age groupers, but who cares, right? I just had people to swim with. And that was actually really nice. The bike course is brutal. It's a lot of climbing, which I was prepared for. It's extremely windy, which I was not prepared for. And so you have these endless descents, with 40-mile-per-hour side winds coming through, and it's a 2-lane road, 1 lane each way, and there's no shoulder, and there's volcanic rock next to it, right? So I'm not a great descender. I love climbing, but I'm not a great descender. And when it comes to winds like that, it was that definitely slows you down. But it's a hard course for everybody. The bike course is rough on everyone. And the run is hot and flat. And that really came to my benefit.
Yeah, I mean, those trade winds are definitely something else coming across the island. But it's, I imagine it's nothing like the descent coming out of Chickamauga and Chattanooga, where you're going 50 miles an hour downhill, rocking these. I got out of the aero bars. I'm like, I was just too scared because I hit 55 miles an hour. I'm like, I'm going to crash. I'm going to crash. I'm going to crash. It was definitely scary. So I can only imagine having to do that over and over and being pushed by winds.
Well, yeah. And the thing is that the longest descent is miles long. And it just doesn't end, the men I know that the pro men were going down over 60 miles per hour, but there's no way for me. Like I'm definitely more careful when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I still don't have health insurance right now. I'm not about taking those kind of risks.
Nope. Insurance or not, I don't feel like that's a risk worth taking. But
no, it'll definitely put you out for a while if you fall.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Definitely one of my most scary. When I watch YouTube videos or videos on Reddit about people crashing and different stuff, it's the road rash that makes me cringe. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So,
yeah, I've never done that. I've only crashed my bike once, and I would like to keep it there. So
I've crashed a couple of times, but what I got the TBI from was I got hit by a car.
That's a different, yeah.
Yeah, it was a Tahoe going about 60 miles an hour head on. So it was painful.
Horrible.
It was painful.
Yeah, that sounds extremely painful.
Yeah, it's a very large. It's a very large truck, and he was a distracted driver. But it is what it is.
Yeah, riding out here, just because there's many cyclists out here, it's not horrible. But I think the drivers, that's always the scary part. It's still the scary part, right? You just don't know. You can do everything right yourself, but you just don't know what they're up to.
Yeah, I'm actually teaching my autistic neighbor how to drive. And I said, look, dude, cyclist, 3 feet. If you can't do that, don't pass.
Yeah, please.
I said, look at me. Remember what happened? Okay, we don't want that to happen to you. So
yeah, no,
it's definitely weird teaching a kid how to drive too. I've never really done that. I don't have any kids of my own, So it's definitely.
I've never tried that either, but I bet that's
And he's autistic, which makes it even harder. So, but it's fun. The kid has kind of been like, I've been kind of his father figure because he doesn't really have one. His great aunt takes care of him. So she's like 70. So I kind of stepped up and filled the role as a neighbor. So
That's
It's-
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Very cool.
I mean, what are your plans for this year? Obviously, it's about to start.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I was hoping for a good start of the season. So I switched coaches in November. I've had the same coach ever since just before I went pro in 2016. Not 2017 was my first pro season. So since 2016, I had the same coach, and which was great. He was phenomenal. I think he got me to a really good place. I just felt like I needed to try something different. I'm not the youngest out there, so I figured if I'm going to try something different, this was kind of going to be it. So I switched coaches in November. And so just taking a little bit of a different approach, which has definitely been a challenge in a good way, but a challenge, just, challenging both the mind and the body in new ways. And so I was kind of hoping to put that to the test a couple of weeks ago at Clash Miami.
I raced
but
that
there are no-
last year.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd never done any of those races, and I figured it'd be fun to try. And I got there, and it was hot, which I thought would be good. I knew I was going to be the slowest swimmer there, but I figured if I could at least have a decent bike ride, and then I knew it was going to be hot once I got there, right? A couple days before, I knew it was going to be hot. I figured that the run would be something where I could shine, right? Unfortunately, right before the race, so the morning of, like half an hour before the race started, I was doing a warm-up run and I felt something pop in my knee. And I knew that was kind of it. So I did start, but during the swim, I could feel it and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to run. And so I didn't actually run. So it turns out I tore my meniscus, and I'm having surgery this week on Friday.
No.
And
How long were you down?
I'm hoping that if it's just a tear and they're going to kind of just cut it out, it should only be like a 4 to 6 week recovery, which is not horrible. So fingers crossed that they don't find anything else while they're in there. And then hopefully, give it a couple months to kind of get back into like race shape. And then hopefully starting July or so, I'll be able to race the rest of the season.
The Miami Pro race is far different than the actual age grouper race. And I think, I don't know what it's like going around in circles all that much. I don't know if it's that exciting.
I kind of liked it. It's in circles, but you go around the outside loop and then you go in and there's some kind of very tight turns. So there's like a technical portion and then a fast portion, which is kind of a nice way to break it up. And you see other people around and it was kind of fun. I kind of like it.
The age groupers, they send you all the way out to Key Largo and you stop right before you see the ocean, turn around, and then do this little out back and then go back out again. It's really boring. You don't see any buildings on that strip going out to Key Largo. Nothing there.
Really?
Yeah. It's not even swamps or anything. It's just like crappy vegetation, a little bit of water here. Sometimes you see a gator. That's about it. That was like 2 gators. That was the highlight of my race last year.
Oh, that's something. I don't think I saw any while I was there. So
Yeah. So that was definitely it. But the Clash race, as in for pros, at least it gives people an alternative to Ironman.
Yeah.
And Rev 3 now has come back with a pro race. So, with Ironman dominating North America, it kind of sucked for pros because we only had one option.
That, and I feel like they've kind of slowly been decreasing their support of the pros. Like the number of races on the schedule this year that have a pro race is extremely limited.
Really?
I think there's like 4 fulls in North America or whatever through most of the summer. That's it. It's just not a lot.
I think they've realized they finally don't, they don't need you. You don't really drive their sport. It's not like, any of the 4 major pro sports in North America where they drive the fanfare of the sport where, people don't get into it because of, first of all, they don't get into triathlon young. And second of all, they get into it like, on average, maybe late 20s, 30s or beyond when they get the money to actually, buy into the sport and everything. So it's not like the pros make a huge difference then. And it's a shame the way that they treat you guys because they see that they don't need you, but I see it in the way that they do. They're just not, I guess, emphasizing the way that you can promote the sport. They don't care. They don't want to put the effort in.
Well, and I think Challenge has been kind of challenging. Clash has been kind of trying to change that, right? With the broadcasting and stuff like that. So it's actually a sport that you can actually watch. And I feel like Ironman has never really invested in that much. They do some of the live streaming, but not for all races. I remember, I think, what was it, last year? That I think it was 70.3 Galveston, which was absolutely stacked because, you know, we were still coming out of COVID. There weren't a lot of races. And so the pro field was massive and they did no recordings or any of anything, right? So they weren't broadcasting at all. And I feel like that those are missed opportunities that Ironman could, you know, do more with to kind of get people more engaged. And I think Challenge, together with the PTO, are trying to kind of change that. I think right now the payoff for that is more for the really the top end pros than it is for the people that are kind of racing at my level at this point. But at least it's good to see that they're really trying to get people engaged into watching the pro athlete races.
Well, what I think they all have got wrong from a broadcasting standpoint is they're using Facebook Live. And if you want to grow the sport, if you want to get attention, you need to use YouTube at least, because people that are our age and younger have, you know, especially the younger ones, have all cut Facebook out of their lives.
Oh,
If you're trying to, you know, if you're trying to grow the sport, you're only attracting more boomers and, you know, Gen Xers, right? That's not going to really do you much good because they're not sticking around the sport really long. Or, you know, people my parents' age, they're not going to watch it. And so you kind of have to go where your audience is.
that's true.
It's not like you
For
could
sure.
broadcast it on TikTok, but YouTube, you know, nobody wants Facebook anymore. So give them the option of YouTube. Like, but I think they've hit that all wrong. But I mean, yeah, you know, finding a way to produce the medium has definitely been helping grow it a little bit, but it's just kind of knowing where your audience is to get to it.
Sure, I'll believe that. Yeah.
And if you can grow it from a younger age, then you can put more money into the sport, which generates more money for pros too.
Yep. Oh, for sure.
Tell me about being a neuroscientist, because you don't work on TBIs or stroke in that area.
Yeah, I mean, so I currently don't work in the field, right? But I grew up in it. My dad's a neuroscientist back in the Netherlands. I grew up in it, loving it, just being fascinated by it. And so I, you know, came to the U.S. for grad school in 2010. I did my PhD at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, and I worked there in a lab focusing on stroke recovery. So we looked at patients that had had a stroke and we followed them up to a year after their stroke, and we looked at basically how brain areas communicate, how that's damaged right after a stroke, and how that kind of recovers as they recover in terms of language and attention and their physical recovery, anything like that, and their memory, that kind of stuff. So it was really cool. It was a very cool project. We had tons of patients. We had a few hundred patients, and we did some really cool work there. And then when I left to go up to Wisconsin to work at a liberal arts college, I ran a little lab, but obviously didn't have access to kind of the big research equipment that I was used to. So I worked with the EEG for a little bit, which is kind of more, you know, you probably had EEGs done, but so it's just a little bit more of a basic way to kind of get some direct brain signals. And we did some projects. I had some students, and my focus there was really more to have a lab so students could experience doing research. And I had some great students there that worked on little projects of their interest with me that focused on attention and focus, especially in athletes. And you know, I was only there for 3.5 years, so we didn't make huge progress, but I've always been fascinated by the brain, and I still am. And a lot of my fascination lies within what we call neuroplasticity. So, and that's why I started working with the stroke patients. So kind of the brain's ability to adapt as we either grow, or in case of stroke after damage, or just in healthy people, right? Like, you know, learning is basically the brain adapting continuously.
Yeah, I definitely understand that because, I mean, even with a TBI, you spend the rest of your life with permanent damage. So you're adapting to pretty much everything. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, you're living in a normal person's world. So you have to figure out how to do that and, you know, survive and get by and function the same way they do. And you kind of, you know, make crude tools like chimps and stuff like that just to survive. So I definitely get the adapting part, and it's, a basic function of my life now.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. So for you, is it mostly focus, attention?
It's a long list. Actually, probably the worst stuff has to do with vision damage, but there's also memory, processing speed. Um, let's see. Uh, I've always, it's a really long list, and no matter how many times I say the list, I never can remember it all. Processing speed, memory, vision. Like my vision is completely out of whack. The field of vision is narrower. I have a blind spot right here. Let's see. I have color, contrast and saturation issues with colors. Um, Depth perception. My eyes don't work in tandem. I have nystagmus, which I had to get a letter from my neurologist saying that, for my car, that I'm not actually drunk because they'll, impound my
Yeah.
car. And even though, because I live in Cobb County, Georgia, we have the quote unquote drug whisperers here that they'll pull me over and I'll be completely sober. I'll piss clean, but they'll still take my car, my license, and then I got to fight the courts, even though. So I had to have that letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally
So
difficult.
yeah, and you know, reading between the lines for one thing. Perception on multiple facets is just definitely screwed up. I used to be able to read the room fairly decent, and understand people and pick up cues. I don't get it anymore. Not at all. And most people who know me, like, you got to be blatantly obvious with them. Like, yes, you do. So it is what it is. Like you get used to it. Like, when my ex, whenever she would be having anxiety issues and stuff, I would have been able to pick that up. But the way I would adapt to the situation is she had a dog who she'd had for many years. So I could read the emotions in the dog because he's a lot more obvious than her. So you find ways to adapt to the situation. So, but that's how, I find different ways to kind of get around through life. I'm still here. I manage. It is what it is. I mean, I have to live on disability now. I'm trying to actually, one day I want to go back to school for neuropsychology because, it takes one to know one, right?
Yeah.
Problem is with short-term memory is I can't do like actual tests. I can't retain the information long enough to fill out a test and pass it. That's my difficulty. So I'd have to go back to school and do something where I'm, a lot of essays and stuff because I love to write. So that's not a hard part for me. And I can pull stuff out of my ass, at a moment's notice, but I just can't do multiple choice tests and stuff. So I already have a master's though. So maybe I can get directly into a PhD program.
So what do you have a master's in?
Architecture.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's the, I have two bachelors, one in psychology and one in architecture. And then I got my master of architecture at Georgia Tech, which everybody always says, "Oh, do you feel bad that you have a master's from a really good school and you don't get to use it anymore?" Like, thank you. I know. I know. I hear you. But yeah, so maybe one day I'll go back to school. We'll see. I got to figure stuff out. But
I mean, I still love neuroscience, but I made the conscious choice to take a step back from it just because trying to combine it with the triathlon stuff, trying to train 20 to 30 hours a week together with like, tenure track faculty position just was a lot.
well, once you get that tenure, you can do whatever you want. Go ahead and murder someone. They can't take it.
Yeah, I mean, I know that that's kind of true, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through before you get that tenure.
Yes.
And that's also coinciding with the years. There is a limited time that you can compete at the highest level, right? I mean, I know that there's pro athletes out there that are still racing in their 50s. I'm not sure that's going to be me, right? I maybe, but I don't want to bank on that.
How old are you now?
36.
Okay. So we're the same age.
And so, I mean, I still have a few good years left. I fully believe that. As long as I enjoy this, I will keep doing it. But I also wanted to have some form of quality of life. And that, meant not trying to stack training before and after work and working at all other hours, basically. And so right now I work as a project manager at the university because when we were in Houston, I worked in the lab for a little bit and it was fun to do. I like doing the research, but I really missed the interaction with students and faculty and kind of more that academic side of it, like the academic side of not research, like more in terms of, what's the bigger picture? What am I doing it for? And so when we moved here, I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I found kind of someone had sent me the ad for this job. And so I'm project manager on a grant that supports women faculty in the sciences. So, if you look at engineering, for example, there's not a lot of women that are faculty.
Oh my God, I went to Georgia Tech. It is a regular hot dog cart there. There are so many dudes.
Exactly. And so what the goal of our grant is to hire more women, but also to retain the women that we have, because women also tend to leave more frequently just because they don't feel at home, but also because, there's a lot of bias. And so there's just a lot of issues there. So we're as a grant, we're really trying to support that. And I absolutely love it. I get to work with faculty, but I don't have to be one. I get to organize workshops and other trainings and stuff like that. And it's been a lot of fun. But the other thing is that generally I have my weekends off, right? When I get home, I'm done. And so when I'm training, I can just focus on training. When I'm working, I just focus on work. And then on the weekends, I get my training in, but then I also have some time to spend, with friends or my wife or the dogs, whatever I want to do, right? Actually have a bit of a time to like chill. And so that's been absolutely lovely. So I'll do this so the grant is for 3 years. We might get an extra year for COVID extension. And then after that, we'll see. But I think that gives me a few more years to kind of do all of this and enjoy it, and then kind of figure out where I want to go after.
Do you have any plans of ever moving back to Europe and like living over there, or are you guys are here?
We're here. I don't think so. I miss my family, obviously. My brother has a little baby boy, and that's been the hardest, I think. It used to be that I had my grandparents back there, but both of my grandmothers passed away over the past few years, and that was the hardest thing. I talk to my parents and my brother frequently. Of course, I miss them, but it's a little easier because, with, video chat and all that kind of stuff, I can kind of really keep in touch with them. And, they can travel here. COVID has kind of dampened that a little, but they used to come out here and I used to go down there. So we kind of go back and forth. Now that my brother has a baby boy and, he's 8 months old and, a lot changes, and that's been rough. So like not being there for that. I've seen him twice. We've been back twice since he's been born, and I'll go again this summer. So I've been trying to go back a little bit more frequently, but I doubt we'll actually move back. I doubt it.
I was going to say I would definitely move back there if it was me, because I think this place sucks now. It is definitely America's not the greatest country in the world anymore, and Europe seems a lot more attractive these days.
With Ukraine right now, I'm not so sure, but
I didn't say Eastern Europe.
Well, yeah, true, but still, it's all a lot closer. Yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to any of it. I like living here. I like, the way people interact here. I mean, and there's definitely benefits to being in the Netherlands, right? And a lot of the things in terms of politics, I definitely agree with more with how they're set up than the US is. But, I also really enjoy living here. The triathlon community here has been extremely supportive, which is also something that I've really appreciated. I've, friends here. Becca is from here, so, she'll travel to Europe for work or whatever, but, it's not necessarily her place either. So I doubt we'll move back. I think when I came here for grad school, I knew that I probably would never move back. I think my parents knew that too. I think it's just always been, I lived in Maryland for 3 years as a small kid, from 91 to 94 for my dad's job. And I think everybody always kind of expected me to move back at some point, and it just took me a little while to get there, but I don't think I'm going back.
You have your green card by now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. Well, Lenny, thanks for joining me today. I don't really have anything else I wanted to ask you. It's been fun.
Yeah, this was great.
So good luck with healing that meniscus, and I'll keep an eye on you.
Thank you. Sounds good. Well, you have a good race season as well.
Yep. Bye-bye.